This is the most important lecture in this introductory section of the course because in this lecture I'm going to talk about prerequisites, how to make the most out of this course, and give you an outlook of the structure of the course. Let's get started. So the prerequisites, the most important thing here is that you must be familiar with the Arduino. You must have already done a little bit of work with it and be comfortable with the Arduino as a device and the hardware, with creating circuits around the Arduino and with programming it using the Arduino IDE. If you are a recent graduate of Arduino Step-by-Step Getting Started and perhaps you're now going through Arduino Step-by-Step Getting Serious, then you are at the perfect stage of your development to get into the ESP32. But if you don't have any experience with the Arduino, then really think carefully if you want to continue this course. You are going to find it a bit overwhelming. In my opinion, the ESP32 is not a good first board for anyone. The Arduino Uno, in my opinion again, is the perfect way to begin your education into microcontrollers and programming. The ESP32 is a very powerful board that can be very overwhelming for beginners, and that's why I'm asking you to be careful here and not to get in this course unless you have some familiarity with the Arduino. So you need to be familiar with the Arduino IDE. You need to be able to, for example, upload sketches and install libraries both manually or via the library manager, and to navigate the integrated development environment installation folders. You should also be able to do a bit of programming. Again, you don't need to be an expert programming in the Arduino. I'm not an expert programmer myself, but you do need to be comfortable with the Arduino language. So for example, you should be able to look at the code example that I've got here, which is from one of my Helium examples in Arduino Step-by-Step Getting Serious, and understand, at least in general, what is happening here. You should also be able to write your own simple sketches, either outright or by modifying existing examples or third-party sketches, but to be able to get those sketches to do what you want them to do. So if you are able to do all that, like if you are comfortable with the Arduino IDE and you are able to write simple programs or modify existing programs and understand what you see when you see a relatively simple Arduino program, then you're good to continue. Another thing that we'll be doing a lot here in this course is to look at documentation, especially the ExpressIf documentation that looks like this. And this documentation gives us a lot of insight on what is going on with the hardware of the ESP32 and with its API, with its programming interface. So I'll be digging into this documentation quite a lot, and it's important for you to not be afraid of it, to be comfortable at looking at documentation, even if you don't understand everything in it. It's true that this documentation can get really deep into various issues that may not make much sense, but I promise you that you will always learn something new no matter which page in the documentation you look at. So I ask you to not be afraid when you look at documentation, and just persevere with it, and you'll be learning a lot. Also, another thing to remember, as I'm going to talk about the philosophy of this course later, is that I'm not explaining everything in great detail, but I am providing a lot of leads, a lot of pointers to documentation that you can look at. To make the most out of this course, you need to be comfortable with following those leads and even discovering your own leads as you are researching a topic. A feature of this course is the code repository. So the course repository is on GitHub, and you can see its URL here, and it contains all of the sketches that I'll be demonstrating in this course, as well as the schematics, and you can see examples of those here as well. So you can always match a lecture with its example sketch and the schematic by looking at the number of the lecture. So you can see, for example, in this view of the GitHub repository, every folder starts with a number 04 minus 040. So that is the number of the lecture that you want to look for in the curriculum, and then match it with the code and schematic files in the GitHub repository. So put this URL on a shortcut in your browser so that it is always easy to get to and to access. If you have enrolled to this course on the Tech Explorations website, then good to also know that there is a dedicated discussion forum. This is where you can go and ask more general questions about your projects, for example, or asking for advice from others. And this is where the ESP32 for Busy People students and instructors like myself will be checking out frequently. Quick look at the course strategy. So when I started designing this course, I wanted to create a course that builds on your existing Arduino knowledge. I didn't want to scrap that knowledge and start from scratch, because we have all invested quite a lot in learning the Arduino. So this course builds on your existing Arduino knowledge, and that's why this Arduino knowledge is a core prerequisite of this course. What this course will do though is to extend this knowledge, and it will teach you how to use the ESP32 in a variety of settings, which means in a variety of circuits, for example, components and so on, in different contexts, in order to both replace and extend the Arduino, because it is a more capable board. It's got more resources. At the very least, you can use it to replace your Arduino with this board, but you will also learn how to take advantage of its additional resources, memory, for example, speed and pins and so on, in order to extend your Arduino. As I said earlier, this course builds on existing knowledge, and it will not go into details as I'm going through the various experiments to cover content that has already been covered in the Arduino step-by-step courses. So for such details, you can always go back to those courses and use them as additional reference source. The course objective is simple. First, the course aims to make you comfortable with using the ESP32 as an alternative to your Arduino in all of your projects. And from that point onwards, to make you self-sufficient in extending your skill and knowledge. The course covers a few important topics in the world of the ESP32, but definitely not all of them, and there's so much more that you can learn. And one of the objectives here is to make you capable of going out and explore more on your own. And with all that said, let's check out the course structure. What's included? You'll see that I've got the various sections listed here from 1 to 11. The first 4 sections have got green labels, which means that do not miss those lectures. You must follow them serially, one after the other, and make sure you do them before you go into the rest. The blue labels indicate sections that you can access out of order if you wish. Of course, you can go from cover to cover, but if you are working, for example, right now on a project that requires you to work with time and date, then after you complete the first 4 sections, you can just jump straight into section number 9 and have a look at time and date and how to use a real-time clock in your project with the ESP32. But if you don't have a particular project that you're working on, just take these sections one at a time and your learning will be solid. So the introduction is what we're doing right now. It's actually going through the last lecture of the introductory section, and that will be followed by the second section, Know Your ESP32. That's where I'm going to drill down to the hardware of the ESP32 and also compare it to the Arduino. So definitely this is something that you need to do, because the ESP32, just like in the Arduino world, is not one thing. There's a lot of variations, there's a lot of features that need to be explained that is necessary to do before we actually go ahead and use those systems or those subsystems in the second part of the course. In the third section, I'm going to show you how to set up your development environment. As you know, we'll be using the Arduino IDE, but we do need to install the support for the ESP32, and I'll show you how to do that in section 3 in Windows and Mac OS. Then we'll go into the first actual experimental section, in section 4, where we'll drill into the GPIOs and show you how to get basic functionalities out of those GPIOs. That's where we play with LEDs, for example. In section 5, we'll work with sensors. I'll show you how to use some of the built-in sensors in the ESP32 and how to attach external sensors, get readings. Then we go to section 6, where we'll play around with displays. That's of course the ubiquitous LCD display, but we also have clock displays and 7-segment displays and 8x8 matrix displays. And display is an important part of the user interface in any project, so definitely worth going through this one. Then we'll look at how to create movement, and the way by which motor control works in the ESP32 is very similar to how you do this in the Arduino. So in section 7, I want to show you some basic examples on how to use DC motors and servo motors. And here definitely you can use your Arduino knowledge to use all sorts of motors as well. One of the really nice features of the ESP32 are the abundance of memory, both RAM and also non-volatile flash memory that is available. And in section 8, I'll show you how to use the memory resources that come with the ESP32. In section 9, I'll show you how to use an external real-time clock in order to help your ESP32 tell time and date. The last 2 sections are about wireless communications. The really cool feature about the ESP32 is that it has support for both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, classic and BLE, that's low energy. And starting with section 10, we'll work first to learn the Wi-Fi module. So we'll go through a series of mini projects to learn how to use the Wi-Fi module on the ESP32 to communicate with the internet. And while Wi-Fi is great for internet communications and Internet of Things applications, if you want to communicate with near-field devices, so with your phone, for example, or with your heart rate monitor, then you need Bluetooth. And in the last section, section 11, I'll show you how to do that. So in section 11, I'll show you how to use Bluetooth low energy and the classic Bluetooth, so that you can use your ESP32 in connection with another device as a serial device. And that's it. At that point, you have completed the course, and I'm confident that you will have achieved our objectives. So, with all that said, let's begin with our first actual hands-on exploration of the ESP32.